Hey, hi, hello. Super Dude here, but I have some devastating news. Brace yourself. I've started playing Skyrim again. Anytime RPGs have come up on this channel, you may have noticed Bethesda's lineup of Sandbox RPGs is never where my interest lies, and perhaps I'll get into why near the end of the video, but that's a topic for later. For now, it's important to know that I have finally succumbed to the temptress that is Elder Scrolls V thanks to a curiosity of mine. Perhaps you've noticed that Bethesda trips into any new console generation excited to release Skyrim for the umpteenth time. I bet they're considering bundling it with Elder Scrolls VI. And people keep buying them! Looking up sales for TES V sends back this snippet from 2023 over and over and over. Skyrim has sold over 60 million copies, making it, as of 2024, the 8th best-selling game ever made, behind these behemoths. And just for clarification, these two fluctuate depending on what exactly you count as Tetris. The new sites aren't in agreement, so I'm showing both. Compare that to the numbers Bethesda was reporting in 2013, and we can see that Bethesda's constant re-releases is an evergreen strategy. But that's only because players both new and old are willing to bite that hook endlessly. As willing as we are, demographically speaking, to buy the same repackaged shit over and over and over and over and over, you can't just repackage junk and expect people to want to buy it. There is more to Skyrim than its ubiquity. So I started getting the feeling to return to Skyrim and figure out where the magic was. Because people aren't as dogmatically replaying Oblivion or Morrowind. You never hear about this sort of behavior in Fallout fans unless it's New Vegas and they're trans. Or hairy. In a genre known for its replayability, Skyrim has been played and replayed more than any other, judging by the numbers at least. So let's explore why that is. As I begrudgingly put on the historically inaccurate helmet for the first time in 8 years, let's explore why this game is the undisputed champion of Bethesda's lineup. Why of all of Bethesda's games, this is the one most deserving of re-release and continues to capture the hearts of its fans, with people continually returning to it a decade on from its original release. Let's figure out why Skyrim— oh crap, that name is taken? For a contingent of you in the crowd, this opener may have sounded somewhat familiar to a recent video released by Rasputin. Why Skyrim? That's because that is quite literally the same prompt I was using when writing this video. Oh no! That's a great video and obviously arrived at some of the same conclusions that I have, given that it's literally the exact same prompt. Great minds think alike. But we also touch on different areas and arrive at different places within the same contexts. You're not going to believe this, but Raz and I are different people, so we had different touchstones and methodologies that resulted in different videos. Consider these two accidental companion pieces on the subject of why Skyrim is our most enduring RPG. This is how Skyrim's design and writing makes it one of the most beloved RPGs of all time. Thanks for the title, Raz, and I hope you enjoy. To quote another great YouTube channel, let's do some history. The year is 2011, and we're deep into the heart of the 7th console generation. Sega's finally, officially out of the hardware picture, presenting the first glimpse of the next 2+ decades of Microsoft and Sony duking it out to see who's the best at the big boy table, while Nintendo sits in the corner and does whatever they're doing. Not that I'm complaining, the Wii and Switch are some of the most beloved consoles to ever exist. They're just not all winners, but hey, who's right all the time? Anyway, though we don't know it at the time, this is kind of the golden age of console gaming. With Microsoft gearing up to wet themselves on stage with the Xbox One and a whole lot of nothing in our current console generation, the 7th would be the last time all console owners were pretty happy across the board. I mean, the Red Ring was a thing, but people didn't really seem all that upset about that, and, you know, with the benefit of hindsight, things would get worse. It wasn't that bad. Skyrim is releasing into this climate. Plenty of gamers with their fun little boxes and Xboxes excited to play the next big thing, and everybody had heard of Skyrim. I mean, it was unavoidable. The marketing budget alone was $15 million, or $21.6 million in today money. For comparison, the entirety of Remedy's Control cost $30 million to make, and adjusting for inflation, the original Psychonauts, Gears of War, and Metal Gear Solid 2 all cost significantly less in their time. That marketing budget alone could make a AAA game. And considering Skyrim's game budget was $85 million, or adjusting for inflation, $1 trillion billion million, and you can see that Bethesda really put their money where their loudspeaker is. So the largest console generation before, or debatably since, could not stop hearing about the next fantasy classic, and we were all ready to buy it. It was the best time in history to release a fantasy game on console, and Bethesda made sure every motherfucker with a TV knew the word Skyrim come 11/11/11. But the PC was also out there, and those folks had a unique benefit in their corner as well, with mods. Mods were nothing new to the Elder Scrolls. People have been modding Bethesda games as far back as Daggerfall. But from Morrowind onward, Bethesda released official tools that allowed people to make modifications to the game's code with greater ease than ever before. Skyrim had these tools as well, but had an extra leg up over its predecessors thanks to the Steam Workshop. Here's an official repository for mods held on Steam servers, removing some of the guesswork of mods by letting Steam do the heavy lifting, as well as making them super visible and accessible to all players of Skyrim thanks to the layout of Steam's service. Through the modding community being attached to the largest video game storefront on the web, anyone with a PC could find mods through Steam's platform, making mods more visible and drastically dropping the technical know-how needed to run them. Steam Workshop was implemented onto Steam's platform in late 2011, so once again, Skyrim is in the right place at the right time, able to benefit from a service in a way no Elder Scrolls before had a chance to. I know it may seem boring to start this video in earnest with a history lesson, but the importance of this point in time cannot be ignored, because it was this moment that forever lodged Skyrim into our collective memories. Its massive marketing budget, along with the confluence of many once-in-a-lifetime business opportunities, caused it to reach the widest audience possible at the height of the console market's power. And those players remember those good times and good games when they see Skyrim on the shelves newly releasing for whatever console's next. Skyrim continues to sell because of that sweet nostalgia, baby! And yes, that's a very important point in this case, but nostalgia can only take us so far. I have loads of nostalgia for Dead Space 2, Portal 2, Mass Effect 2, 2, but none of those games went on to triple their sales numbers in the intervening decade. There's gotta be more to this. So let's do something wildly controversial and actually turn on the game.
You are finally awake.
The character creator gives you access to the facial bones in a way that still makes it a solid character creator, even today. I decided to make my Argonian as blue as possible, and then I went out into the world and did my thing. I never really stayed with any one quest for too long, mostly because I kept running into difficulty spikes that prevented easy progress, so I would just pivot to something else in my quest book. Which brings me to one of the Elder Scrolls' greatest strengths, not just Skyrim, a system positive for all of Tamriel's games. Stuff just happens to you. You overhear some chit-chat between citizens and you note it in your journal. Some asshole decides to pick a fight and you get a quest to figure out why they attacked you. You find random items in the wild which commands that the Daedric Lord tells you to do. You enter a new town only to immediately be roped into a murder and a conspiracy. Skyrim just drops stuff into your lap, which is an important change because it is an opt-in. In most RPGs, quests are marked on the minimap because the game is asking you to engage with it. Hello, wise adventurer, my husband was killed by Templars and they stole my ring, please get my ring. Not sure if this is the best use of my time, what with the demon hole in the sky, but sure, random elven woman, I'll get your stupid ring. After 5 to 6 random fetch side quests like this, I started ignoring these stupid markers. Even in games where the side quest writing is good, you need to opt in, and that changes your relationship with the material. Because the game put this exclamation point here, you're aware that all of this is, you know, unnecessary. You choose to press the button and talk to the person and hear what they have to say about their goddamn ring. And depending on the game, it may be an active sign that this little mark is a waste of your time. Skyrim doesn't let you make that decision. If you hear it, it ends up in your log, and you don't really know what you're getting into until you check it out for yourself. There's a more adventurous feel to hearing something's happening out by Riften Way and deciding to take a walk out there and seeing what you find. And at this early point in Skyrim, that sense of adventure is strong as new points of interests and quests are added to your map with each new conversation. Unless you spend a little coin, you can't fast travel to anywhere far yet. So in this early period, the game is at its most adventurous as each quest dares you to press into the unknown. We're presently in the middle of Skyrim's map, around Whiterun, which may just be the prettiest the game is with any consistency, aside of special areas or other planes of existence. Skyrim is a bit of an ugly baby most of the time, but it looks good here, and that pairs well with the adventurousness. It is both brimming with possibility and good to look at, for now. And this is another thing that makes Skyrim last in our memories. For its first 10 to 20 hours, it's a great time. The visuals are on point here, the dragons are novel instead of annoying, and there are limitless directions and options available to you. Skyrim's early game is well tuned. Things feel appropriately dangerous. You can't just run around killing guards yet, so your roleplay decisions in town have some mechanical consequence to them. TES V really puts its best foot forward, so when people think about revisiting Skyrim, other than that huge opening cutscene, they remember the fantastic scope of this open world and latch onto that memory, as opposed to whatever made you stop. The possibility space of Skyrim is more enticing than any of its drawbacks. And speaking of the world, Skyrim's world design is from a different school of thought than the open worlds you often see nowadays. You see, when I was a kid, I never really heard people using the term open world to describe these games with huge maps, instead calling them sandbox games. I don't actually know the history of when these terms came about, couldn't find anything solid on when they were first used. I just know from my anecdotal experience that I called all these big games sandbox games, but there is an important distinction between these terms. Open world games are games with a map that is non-linear in how you would explore it. Say the game tells you to head to Kakariko Village. You could arrive there from multiple different routes, and there's often a greater emphasis on exploration just by virtue of having this larger map. Designers want to encourage you to play in the space, so they'll pepper the world with stuff to do and find. However, and this is going to sound weird, bear with me, the openness isn't the primary point of an open world game. Like, Super Mario 64 would be significantly different if it was a corridor game, but a corridor Super Mario 64 is essentially Crash Bandicoot. It's very different now, but it's still a 3D platformer of sorts. Some more examples of open world games include most of the games in the Legend of Zelda series, some of the early Assassin's Creeds, Dragon Age Inquisition, Witcher 3, etc. Now, I want to stress this because I know I just said something weird. I'm not saying Assassin's Creed would be better if it was just the assassinations in a corridor over and over. A lot of AC's appeal is the lovingly rendered historical settings, and it wouldn't be AC without it, but primarily, the game is about doing cool assassin stuff, and the open world is a complement to that. The open world is in service to the primary design goal. The primary design goal isn't the openness itself. The Zelda series is another great example of this. That first game is extremely open-ended, more like a true sandbox, and then as more games came out, we saw that adventurous nature tighten and tighten until we arrive at a place like Twilight Princess, where it's pretty much exclusively on rails, with the adventure being more narratively driven than exploration driven. By contrast, sandbox games encourage the player to do whatever they want with the tools they're given in the space, even if that means ignoring the intended path. Skyrim has an intended path, the Alduin Dragon conflict, but you can freely ignore that to do whatever you please from the moment you leave Helgen. Sandbox games are open worlds with much less emphasis on the goals, allowing the player to determine what they want to do within the game for themselves. Examples of sandbox games include Grand Theft Auto 3, kind of the big one, can't mention sandbox without it, as well as Minecraft, Sims, Just Cause, and Skyrim. In fact, basically every game Bethesda has made, with some exceptions, have been sandbox games, some more successfully than others. Sandbox games are open worlds where the openness is the point. You are free to do what you will with the tools the game gives you, and Skyrim is first in its class when it comes to mechanical freedom in an RPG. The magic versus combat system allows for many different builds and archetypes, but every RPG has this sort of build diversity. Skyrim's specific strength, oddly enough, is alchemy, enchanting, one of the better lockpicking minigames, smithing, picking flowers and ripping wings off of insects, a stealth system that interacts with multiple other combat layers, fishing, apparently. Skyrim has multiple systems that are each involved enough on their own that you can pour resources into each of them for hours. All of this gives you a lot of mechanical freedom to engage with what you want to. But perhaps more importantly, this wildly increases the role-playing potential of this game. One of the ways some people play Skyrim is by moving into a town and just only doing work in the local area around that space. Perhaps hunting game with their bow and selling it in Riverwood, performing the role of the town butcher. Perhaps you move into that hut in the bog and do a lot of alchemy to perform the role of town alchemist or hag that the children fear. Or as an extreme example, performing this wood cutting animation. Performing this action gives you some firewood for each piece you chop. You could legitimately earn money this way, selling firewood, and while that option is there, this is such a slow way to do that. The only reason why anyone would bother with these animations is if they were role-playing, but that is exactly why it's here! The game has all these systems and little touches that allow you to be any type of person in Skyrim, even going so far as to not be an adventurer if you're truly roleplay pilled. Other RPGs don't have the same breadth of options like Skyrim does. They tend to be way more focused on what they're about. The Witcher 3, for all of its fantastic writing and art, is a game about Geralt, meaning the things you can say and the verbs of the game are tightly confined to things Geralt would say or do. Same is true in a lot of RPGs. You've got to fulfill the role the designer laid out for you, whether that's shooting Geth, closing a demon hole in reality, or being an apocalyptically smashed cop asking questions of anything with a face. Those are open worlds. The nouns and verbs of the world are tightly confined by what the protagonist would do, but Skyrim is a sandbox. You can do nearly anything you'd want to do, and the writing complements this. Skyrim and Oblivion are both very modular in their writing of quest lines, and this is a massive advantage and a massive disadvantage. Let's start with the pros. Skyrim doesn't tell you what quests it thinks you should do, allowing you to choose for yourself which quests you complete and in what order. You're likely going to hear or see the companions soon after the game starts, and they are the warrior questline of this game. You could choose to follow that path, or not, continuing down the main questline. Or not again, choosing to spelunk for Meridia's Beacon, or better yet, no quests, just random wandering. Let's just wander for hours. Because Skyrim's not very particular about what quests you do, they can be completed interchangeably by the player. Or, and this is crucial, never picked up at all. Any of them. This is different from a more guided RPG like Mass Effect 2. No matter what, you're going to find out about the collectors. You are going to go to Horizon. You will do items A, B, C, D before game credits. And these little question marks, remember these? This is the optional stuff. But there are some things that you must do, or else you're not playing Mass Effect. Skyrim, by contrast, doesn't care. It doesn't even care if you do its main quest. You could do whatever you want, in whatever order you want, further aiding roleplay and replay potential by never ever piping up to tell the player what they're supposed to be doing. You ever have that game that you think about playing and then you remember this one particular part of it and you're like, I don't want to do that? For Mass Effect 2, it's definitely that Praetorian mission where 2 of them attack you at once. Everybody remembers that. Skyrim doesn't have anything like that. The designers set a single thumb on the scale within the first hour. Hey, you should really go to Riverwood. And also the guards won't shut up about the Dawn Guard, but other than that, everything is available to you. The world is your oyster. But these strengths are not without their drawbacks, and huge ones at that. How does the world react to your good deeds? What do the common folk say to you about your heroic acts? Sometimes the guards will reference some event that happened in this other questline, but that's it for most of the game. Because quests can be completed in any order, the game can account for what you've done and at what moment. Imagine with me, Brynjolf is starting to pull you into the Thieves Guild questline, only to note, hey, aren't you the Archmage of that college in the north and Thane of this very city? I don't know much magic myself, but I've heard of Muffle. Think you could use those skills to make a little bit of money? That would be cool and immersive, but if Bethesda's writers decided to commit to this reactionary quest design for even just the major quest lines, they'd soon find themselves committing to a combinatorial explosion of writing to account for when the player does what for every other quest. Skyrim's scope is just too massive to allow for that level of reactivity, so it doesn't, aside of little nods made by guards who never realize that maybe it's actually you who did all those things. And that mission in the main quest that feels like both a massive buzzkill to the pacing we just built a mission prior and a band-aid solution to the problem of its own world building. Usually this lack of connected tissue is a small thing, you know? It'd be nice if people noted that I'm an important figure, but it's fine, I guess. Other times it makes the writing actively worse, like this example pointed out by Duke of Wales in his narrative critique of Skyrim about the Thalmor dossiers. These notes detail how the Thalmor benefit greatly from the Civil War, and puts them into striking distance of the Empire should they fail here, unbeknownst to both Ulfric or the Imperium. Surely this information would shake the very foundations of the Civil War and perhaps turn both factions against the true villain in this conflict. But no, you can't give these books to anyone. Your reward for thinking this information should be very notable to Talius or Ulfric is your own disappointment for thinking the game would do something smart. There's a reason why the Thane of All Holds, Master of the Thieves Guild and Dark Brotherhood, Dovahkiin, Slayer of Alduin, yada yada yada, memes exist. Because Skyrim's lack of care swings both ways. It's a game that gives a lot of roleplay freedom for you to do whatever you wish, but it similarly doesn't respond to what you do in it. This world is static. Nothing you do fundamentally changes anything, anywhere. Even killing the f***ing Emperor puts no damper on the Civil War, if you haven't single-handedly taken care of it beforehand, that is. This is another reason why Skyrim's opening hours hold up better to scrutiny. When your deeds are killing baby Droger, doing various deeds about town, getting the crown, save the town of Mr. Krabs, the game doesn't react because this is everyday adventuring stuff. Why would some guard in Solitude know what I've done in Ivarstead? But as your fame grows, the world doesn't change to reflect that, and the divide between the game you're playing and the character you're imagining start to widen more and more as the hours tick on. As I said, Skyrim is a wonderfully dense game, full of varying quests, mechanics, and subsystems to interact with, but these systems are rarely so enriching all their own. Anyone here still playing Gwent? Gwent was an exceptional card-based minigame inside of The Witcher 3. I say was because Gwent was so popular that it spun off into its own set of Witcher-based card games, still going strong if I recall. That is a system with a load of depth, so much so that some people play through whatever Geralt and Ciri are up to, not because they cared about these dorks, but because they wanted to play more games of Gwent. The Witcher 3 is laser-focused on only allowing you to do Geralt-coded actions, sure, but the depth of these systems made exploring The Witcher 3 engaging. Skyrim is the opposite. There is so much you can do in this game, but nothing is terribly deep. The moment you interact with a subsystem in Skyrim, you understand immediately everything it has to offer you, and now it's all about grinding the levels till you reach the end of that path. All breadth, no depth. Not in the combat, not in the side systems, and not in the writing. God, the writing. Skyrim's writing is easily the worst part of the game for me, and I bet you most of Skyrim's detractors will put this near the top of their complaints as well. Things are just kind of obvious. Most missions are like, go here, get thing, kill people, come back. There are exceptions, of course. The Azura mission is neat. I like the Sanguine quest as well, those are both fun visually. I I like the final boss at the Thieves Guild's first ending, and the immediate raising of the stakes in the College of Winterhold quest at the midpoint was an exciting shift, even if it was glaringly obvious who was going to do it and with what, but that's the thing. I'm mentioning big quest lines and Daedric artifacts. These are supposed to be the bread and butter quests in the game, and they're merely good. The rest is just slop, placed in the game not to be satisfying writing or design, just content to keep you playing the game. Similarly, most of the people you speak to in Skyrim are slop-based NPCs that just exist to fulfill their mechanical purpose, with the most bare-bones writing attached to pass the bare minimum of character. I don't get the sense that any of these people really exist in Tamriel. I could probably count on two hands the genuine characters in Skyrim, which is to say people with personalities. And if we narrow it down to characters with arcs, well, even some of the larger faction quest lines are also this same slop. It has some moments that go hard, but they're few and far between, and the game actively threatens to be boring if you actually listen to it talk. Skyrim's world is brimming with things to do and quest lines to follow, and through Skyrim's complete dedication to player freedom, you can make a character that just doesn't make any narrative sense. On the opposite side of the roleplay Dovahkiin, we have the completionist Dovahkiin, and this character is a walking contradiction. You are a thief. You only steal, not murder. They're not the Dark Brotherhood. You gotta follow the thieves' code, except you are the Dark Brotherhood. A cold-blooded murderer, but also the savior of the entire world, who's an archmage and leader of the warrior clan at the same time, and on top of all this, a vampire lord. An open world could, and I think should, be saying something about how it lays out its content. The overall mise-en-scène of NPCs, quests, items, and dialogue can communicate a truth about the world, or rather a range of truths, some contrasting or complementary. A true dialectic of all the things that define what it means to be Night City, or Revachol, or Skyrim. When this is done right, it immediately becomes a modern classic overnight, and everybody sings its praises to high heavens, but Skyrim's world has little in terms of cohesive meaning. It feels like the designer said, what would be a cool thing to fight, or use to fight, or be to fight, and put it in the game, even if it gets in the way of their pre-existing lore or rules set out by their game in the previous hour. Wait, who put this Fortnite footage here? When you try to place every cool thing in the game for coolness' sake, you erode the possibility of meaning. And though I don't think Skyrim is without meaning, you don't get a 2.5 hour long video essay if it meant nothing at all, it is a muddy mess, and it could have been so much more. Returning to those detractors, often when they say that Skyrim's story is a snore, they will immediately bring up Oblivion. So I ask you, why aren't we all playing Oblivion, then? Why hasn't some YouTuber reevaluated it, said it's golden, and word of mouth spread its gospel to the Vatican? Or the other games of Bethesda's gamography, for that matter. To figure out why, I conscripted members of my family to play the Elder Scrolls line for me to try and figure this out, lest this video would come out in a year instead of a month. My fiancée played Oblivion, since she was playing that game since she was 8. Her older sister played Morrowind, because she was the only one old enough to make memories of the game when it came out. And I played Skyrim, because it was the first Elder Scrolls I ever played, joining when most people did. 3 different players who started with 3 different generations of Elder Scrolls. In playing the games this way, it is clear that what Skyrim lacks, Oblivion seems to have. It has more memorable quests and characters found throughout, and the art direction is more vivid than Skyrim's grays and browns. And while the characters almost never look right, I think that's part of the charm. Oblivion is epic fantasy, with its fair share of lovable goofballs, but also reluctant heroes trying to save the world. You're fighting demons pouring out of Oblivion, hero of the realm, saving this colorful world and its denizens from the blight of the Daedra. Skyrim is more grounded, still an epic fantasy, but with more dark fantasy sprinkled in. Their art directions alone should clue you into that shift, but I still think Skyrim looks a bit too drab most of the time, in my opinion. And as I've said already, Oblivion's quests leave a strong impression. So much so that my fiancé would tell me the entire questline story before it even started, with a level of vim and vigor and excitement that I rarely see from her. I am the excitable one. She's a much more timid person, so for the questlines to draw that out of her is notable to me. Even some of the one-off quests do interesting things, like the Painter quest. The Shadow over Innsmouth reference is fun if you know the original, the haunted house you can purchase, the Nightmare quest, lifting the veil, dealing with some deep lore of the setting. I could go on, and none of these have any connection to the larger quest lines. These are just solid, self-contained stories. Skyrim doesn't have nearly that same charm in its quest log. And again, I haven't even brought up Oblivion's guild quests yet. Oblivion's Dark Brotherhood quest is apparently one of the most beloved quest lines in all of Elder Scrolls, according to my fiancé, and she has a particular soft spot for the Grey Fox such that she gets somber when she thinks about the Thieves Guild, because Oblivion's thieves are noble, Robin Hood-style figures in a way that Skyrim's absolutely aren't. So sure, Oblivion is better at everything Skyrim is bad at, but this is obviously a gross oversimplification, right? As someone who has dabbled in the other scrolls but only completed Skyrim, it's easy to lose track of what makes Skyrim special after you become so familiar with it. Those excellent features, however, are the very thing that keeps Skyrim in the lead over its formers. You may notice I've said nothing about Morrowind yet, and there is a funny reason for that. Morrowind has some really interesting things going for it. It has no waypoints at all, instead giving you directions to find where you need to go. Really granular ones too, like exit Caldera, walk south following the road so you see the oak tree, head west and enter the ravine, then head south until you find the shiny rock leading to the dungeon. You genuinely need to do some map and compass crap to find where you're going, and as a massive fan of Firewatch, I really like this concept. Another often lauded aspect is the spellcrafting, which lets you make any type of spell you want, even stuff that's completely game-breaking. Watch a speedrun of Morrowind if you want to see just a taste of what's possible. Overall, Morrowind both aims for a much greater sense of immersion in its world with no waypoints and opting for diegetic fast travel as opposed to UI fast travel we use nowadays, and makes magic a much more involved but rewarding system to use. But I never got to see any of that firsthand. When I sent my someday sister-in-law to play Morrowind, she happily turned it on and gave it the old college try, but after 15 minutes, she turned it off and refused to play it. She swung her sword against some crab thing for like 5 minutes, and it just kept saying miss as she saw her sword connect with the enemy, because Morrowind does a percentage chance to hit thing, like a classic RPG, instead of ensuring each hit that visually connects is actually connecting. She hated that so much that she just turned the game off, and as such, no Morrowind footage for me. Oblivion's writing is good, but its combat is actually pretty in-depth in a way my fiancé had no memory of. You can't just swing wildly into your enemies. You need to block their blows, which sends them into a stagger animation, which then allows you to counter with your own blows, leading to a sort of block, counter, riposte gameplay, which is much more involved than what Skyrim has going for it. As someone who loves Sekiro, this sounds interesting to me, but this is swiftly undercut by the game throwing 10 enemies at you and making these fencing mechanics all melt down to a hack and slash. She even said to me that if she didn't already know that Oblivion's quests are really awesome, and for her childhood nostalgia of the game, she knows she would have put it down already. And this is to say nothing of how she technically played the game wrong. I think we all know how leveling works in the Elder Scrolls, but for a quick recap, you level into individual skills, and those individual skills add up to your greater main level, and that affects the progression of the game. It turns out Oblivion's tuning is such that it expects you to focus on the specific skills you want to use, and a tight band of them at that. Because I was going for a spell sword sort of deal in Skyrim, she wanted to do the same in Oblivion, leading to her leveling Blade, Light Armor, Destruction, Restoration, Illusion, later adding Stealth and Abjuration, as well as Athletics because you just gain those passively. For each major level, her individual skills weren't going up that much, so she was behind the curve of the enemies, and the game just kept getting harder. It is unfortunately very easy to level inefficiently in Oblivion, and she dove headfirst into that pit with those gameplay choices. All this preamble leads to perhaps Skyrim's greatest strength over all other games in Bethesda's lineup, its accessibility. Morrowind is so inaccessible in the modern day that my SSIL refused to play it after 15 minutes. Despite all of her nostalgia for the game, she genuinely played for a huge part of her childhood. To be fair to her, she tends to play shooters and live service games nowadays, so she's far removed from her times playing Morrowind, but that's the thing. For that type of player, the person who's really tuned into good game feel, Morrowind feels like being forced to stand near Joe Rogan. Being forced to put your hand in a box full of bugs. Oblivion is a massive improvement, but it still suffers from some of those low-level pacing issues that bring the game down, while also suffering from that thing many older RPGs have where you already need to know where you're going, what you're doing, and where the pitfalls are to ensure you have the best time. As one example of Oblivion's pacing issues, that lockpicking minigame is just so much longer than Skyrim's, sometimes by minutes, and can take a boatload of lockpicks just to bypass one lock. Imagine spending all that time and resources to open a chest, only to find it was only holding 30 gold. Devastating, right? That's the entire reason why she decided to pick up Alteration later, to get the spell to bypass the lockpicking minigame. Skyrim, by contrast, suffers from none of this. The combat may be basic, but it's flashy and easy to pick up no matter what weapon you're using. The magic may no longer be customizable, but it's similarly flashy and rewards your aiming in a way that melee combat does not, just a smidgen more complex, and just as rewarding. We're all aware of how stealth archers are the most overpowered thing in the game, and most people gravitate towards that because it's what makes the player feel the most powerful. And the quests may be nearly brain dead and the waypoints even more so, but if you're only here to have a good time and don't want to use your brain, then brain dead it is! Near the back of my recording, I found myself just fast traveling everywhere and chasing the waypoints because I simply didn't care about the writing anymore. But the combat was alright. and the waypoints led to the fighting eventually, so follow the waypoint road I did. Skyrim is a watered-down version of Oblivion, which itself is watered down from Morrowind and so on. It may not be ambitious or interesting in the same way as its predecessors, but it sure does go down smooth. And what brings 60 million people to the table more than being easy to pick up and play? Honestly, if Bethesda remade Oblivion in Skyrim's engine, I think Oblivion would be the better game, and could definitely outshine Skyrim in most situations. But Bethesda would never do that to their prized cash cow, which is why the fans are doing it. Remember, Skyrim is one of the most impressive modding communities in all of games, and for more than a decade now, a group of developers have been working to convert the whole of Oblivion into Skyrim system, with Skyblivion. It has a tentative release date of 2025, where the full game will come out without the DLC, so this is a huge chance to see if Oblivion can really stand up to Skyrim on an even playing field. Though, it is a mod of Skyrim, meaning it requires Skyrim to play, so there's still no real way to check if Oblivion would beat Skyrim, but still! Super awesome thing they've worked on for 12 plus years, and I'm excited to see when it's finished. Similarly, Oblivion moved Morrowind into Oblivion's engine, and would be a much easier way to play that game in the modern day, so perhaps I could try to get my SSIL to play it in that system. We'll see. And while I don't know much about this subject because I was a console player, mods are such an important aspect of this system. Skyrim is still played to this day because it has, genuinely, a decade full of mods behind it. You can make Skyrim even further than the Sandbox's original intent into whatever you want it to be. And yeah, that's an important aspect as well, just wanted to put that here. See, the thing about all the problems I've laid at Skyrim's feet so far is they're only problems from the critical perspective. If you play Skyrim like a podcast or hangout game, where you're not really engaging with the game itself, just using it as a background activity to occupy your hands while you hang out with others, then the problems of Skyrim disappear entirely. It's all the roleplay and combat, large and well-crafted setting, and excellent game feel, without the unreactive writing, slop characters, and meaningless protagonist, because you aren't paying attention to that to begin with. Skyrim is the perfect podcast game, and is likely another major reason why it lasts to this day. Skyrim's problems aren't problems if you play the game on mute. With all these facts in mind, I think I'm finally able to lay out the full picture of why Skyrim is the longest lasting RPG in Bethesda's catalog, and debatably of all time, at least for now. Skyrim was in the right place at the right time, even before its gargantuan marketing campaign, meaning everyone from the 7th generation remembers Skyrim and has a lot of nostalgia for it. Skyrim leads with its best self, presenting an extremely interactive world and wealth of systems and options to tinker with far less rust and mechanical jank than any of the previous Bethesda offerings, and the world feels alive with how things just happen to you. Quests come to you rather than you opting into the side quests yourself. Skyrim is all optional, meaning it could be anything you want it to be. On the other hand, the world doesn't ever react to what you do to it, and the writing leaves a lot to be desired, and even as you get late in the game, enemies become bullet spongy, sword spongy, in a way that makes fights feel needlessly drawn out. But for someone who plays Skyrim like a podcast game, none of those things matter, and honestly, I bet most people are playing Skyrim that way today, because we all know what plot points it has in store. You aren't really considering killing Parthenax after your 7th playthrough, are you? Maybe you are, I'm not judging. But Skyrim is at its best when you don't listen to it, and instead feel it. Skyrim is the king of RPGs because we remember it fondly, it still handles really well, has a really good first 20 hours, and is one of the best fantasy sandboxes we've ever seen. And obviously it's fun to control. You can be anything, do anything, and Skyrim never gets in your way. It is a game whose central goal is being all things to all people, and miraculously, somehow, it pulled that off. Skyrim doesn't have any true ending. No quest will fade to credits, so every one of Skyrim ends the exact same way. You get bored, you turn it off, and you never turn it back on. But the thing is, boredom is an inherently weak emotion. Boredom isn't something that sticks in your brain unless it's mixed with anger, so your final moments of any Skyrim playthrough are destined to fade into the background of your mind. But the start? That sense of endless possibility and adventure? That feeling remains strong in our memories and calls us back to Skyrim to be re-experienced anew every now and again. I am Super Dude. Thanks for watching. Hello there, and thanks for making it to the end of the video. For making it to the end this time, I got brownies fresh from the oven, so eat them while they're hot. This video has probably been the most exhausting one that I've made in a while because I just kept hitting snags in the process. Unrecoverable footage, editing software bugs, the works. And to put a cherry on top of the whole thing, discovering that Rasputin made a video with the exact same prompt sent me into a full panic for a bit there. But thanks to Raz's words of encouragement, I felt strongly that this video was its own distinct work that wasn't derivative of his own, and I was able to get it across the finish line as a result, which is why you are obviously watching it right now. As I said near the beginning of this video, his and my videos go in completely different directions and explore the topic of why Skyrim from different directions, so they're oddly enough companion pieces by complete accident. Make sure to go watch Raz's video if you haven't yet. His insights really got my goose a couple of times when I was watching it, because I was like, I never thought of that! It's amazing how two people can enter a project with the exact same idea and come out with two completely different works. Humans are neat. And of course, I'd like to thank Raz for his words of encouragement that he gave to me when I was panicking a little bit. Without your kindness, I may have dropped this video and it was like 2/3 the way to completion, so I really can't thank you enough. And while I'm thanking people, I obviously can't forget my patrons, can I? If you like what I'm doing here, consider becoming a patron, where your money can help finance this work more consistently than YouTube's ad revenue, which is currently going towards things like saving for a better internet provider, and an XLR mic that won't peak when I get excited about the topic as I do in almost every video I make. Your contribution is extremely helpful, and I thank everyone who considers supporting me in this way. But anyway, that's the video. Thanks for holding out to the very, very end, and I hope to see you in the next one. Be safe, love you, bye!